The rich aroma of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee filled the modest roadside cafe. Outside, rain drizzled against the large front window, blurring the neon glow of the flickering open sign. It was the kind of place where the same faces returned every morning, exchanging pleasantries over steaming mugs and plates of eggs. But today, for Vanessa Bryant, something was different. She had been visiting Ellie's cafe for years, finding comfort in the familiar clatter of plates and murmured conversations. As a single mother, she had worked tirelessly to raise her son, Jordan, with unwavering love and discipline. She had sacrificed, endured, and taught him the lessons her own mother once passed down: resilience, self-respect, and the courage to stand tall in a world that often sought to diminish them. But even the most patient hearts have their limits. Vanessa sat in her usual booth, flipping through the worn pages of a book while waiting for her breakfast. She was dressed simply, jeans and a soft sweater, but carried herself with quiet dignity. What she didn't realize was that her presence alone had already become a problem. Across the room, Officer Todd Reynolds leaned against the counter, idly stirring his coffee. He was a burly, middle-aged man with a belly that pushed against his belt and an air of arrogance that followed him everywhere. The badge pinned to his chest had long since stopped being a symbol of duty and had instead become a tool of unchecked power. And if there was one thing he despised, it was people like Vanessa sitting in places he didn't think they belonged. Taking up a whole booth, just sitting there, he muttered, just loud enough for the waitress, Donna, to hear. Donna, a woman with silver-streaked hair and weary eyes, tensed but said nothing. She, like everyone else in town, knew Todd's views. They were ugly and mean-spirited, but no one ever called him out. No one ever dared. Vanessa remained unaware of his glare, her focus still on the book in her hands. She had long since grown used to the sideways glances, the forced smiles, the thinly veiled hostility. But today wouldn't be about silent resentment. Today, it would be open. Todd set down his cup with a deliberate clink and strode toward her table. His boots hit the linoleum floor with a heavy rhythm, stopping just inches from where she sat. "You waiting for someone?" he asked, his voice laced with thinly veiled disdain. Vanessa looked up, slightly startled. "Excuse me?" "I asked," Todd repeated, louder this time, "if you're waiting for someone or if you're just taking up space." Vanessa blinked, confusion flashing across her face. The cafe was nearly half empty. There was no reason for him to ask such a question. A quiet hush settled over the room as patrons glanced at each other uneasily before looking away. "I'm just having breakfast," she replied evenly. Todd scoffed. "Seems like you've been sitting here a while. Sure you're not just loitering?" A cold pit formed in Vanessa's stomach, but she refused to let him see it. Her voice remained calm, steady. "I ordered my meal, officer. I'm not bothering anyone." Todd let out a low chuckle. "Well, that depends on who you ask. Some folks might not appreciate." He paused, a cruel smirk pulling at his lips, certain people getting too comfortable. The air inside the cafe grew thick with discomfort. Donna scrubbed at the counter as if it would erase the tension. A couple in the corner booth shifted in their seats, while a young busboy, Kevin, clenched his tray, knuckles whitening. Everyone understood what was happening. Everyone always did. Vanessa inhaled deeply, her mother's words echoing in her mind. "There's a time to ignore and a time to stand firm." She set her book down. "And if I don't leave?" Todd's smirk faltered slightly. "Then I'll have to escort you out myself." Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but a deep voice cut through the silence. "I'd love to see you try." The entire cafe stilled. Vanessa turned toward the entrance, and there, standing tall in a crisp, pressed uniform, was Jordan Bryant, her son, her pride, the police chief of the entire department. A thick silence swallowed the cafe. Todd's expression changed instantly. His smirk vanished, replaced by something far weaker: uncertainty. Jordan took a step inside, his presence commanding attention. At 6'2" with broad shoulders, he exuded authority, but it wasn't just his stance that silenced the room. It was the polished badge gleaming on his chest. The highest-ranking officer in the city had just walked in, and the man he outranked was standing in the middle of the room, caught in his own trap. Vanessa's heart swelled with quiet pride. The same boy she had raised with love and wisdom. The boy who learned early on that life wasn't always fair, was now the one holding all the power. Todd, meanwhile, looked like he had swallowed a stone. "Mom," Jordan said, his voice even but edged with something sharp. He walked to her booth, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Everything okay?" Vanessa knew that tone. She knew the tightness in his jaw, the restraint in his voice. He was furious. Todd let out an awkward chuckle, attempting to recover. "Oh, hey there, Chief. Just having a little talk with your mother." Jordan's eyes locked onto his, piercing and unreadable. "A talk," he repeated, his voice carrying a weight that made Todd shift uncomfortably. Todd forced himself to stand straighter. "Yeah, just making sure everything's running smooth around here." Jordan studied him for a long moment, then, without breaking eye contact, reached into his pocket. He pulled out his badge, setting it down on the table with a deliberate clink. Power shifted in an instant. The remaining cafe patrons barely dared to breathe. Donna suddenly found an intense interest in wiping the coffee machine. Kevin, the busboy, stood frozen in place. Todd swallowed, his bravado cracking. "Chief, listen, this isn't what it looks like." Jordan cut him off. "It looks like you were harassing a woman for no reason. It looks like you were using your badge to intimidate someone instead of protect them. And it looks like you made a serious mistake." Todd's face turned an angry shade of red. "I didn't mean—" "What's your badge number?" Jordan asked coolly. Todd blinked. "Excuse me?" Jordan didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The steel in his words was enough. "Your badge number," he repeated, stepping closer. Todd hesitated. He knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't just a warning. This was the beginning of consequences. "Now," Jordan added. Todd's lips parted, but no words came out. Jordan waited. Finally, in a voice barely above a mumble, Todd muttered, 54327. "Louder," Jordan commanded. Todd gritted his teeth. 54327. Jordan nodded and pulled out his phone, entering the number into a report. Todd's pulse quickened. His mind raced. Was this enough to suspend him? Demote him? Worse? Jordan tucked his phone away, then turned to his mother. "Did this man ask you to leave?" Vanessa met her son's eyes. "Yes." Jordan turned back to Todd. "On what grounds?" Todd fumbled for a response, but found none. Jordan took a slow step closer. "You will apologize to my mother. Right now." For the first time in his life, Todd Reynolds felt powerless, and the entire cafe was watching. Todd's throat tightened as every eye in the cafe burned into him. His usual arrogance had crumbled, replaced by a quiet, seething fear. He cleared his throat, forcing out the words, I'm sorry, ma'am." Vanessa held his gaze, unshaken. She didn't need his apology. She had already won. Jordan picked up his badge, slipping it back into place. "Make sure it never happens again," he warned, voice like steel. Todd nodded stiffly, knowing his days of unchecked power were over. As Vanessa took a slow sip of her coffee, the balance of power had shifted forever.